Welcome to the IDP show. I'm your host, Evan Ronda, and I am joined by the incredibly handsome Jake Colhagen. Jake, how are you doing today, my man?
I continue every time we have a conversation to second guess your judgment based on some of your analysis of me. But I'm doing all right. It's Wednesday. We're in the middle of the week. It's been a weird week, but you know what makes every week better? Talking IDP, and especially talking IDP with the Evan Ronda of the IDP game theory.
It is Wednesday, my dudes, said one of the greatest quotes of all time. Among many incredible quotes. That actually, I'm curious, is Vine like a before your generation kind of thing? Because like I caught the tail end of it, but I don't know for people that are like 10 years older than me or so. Were you ever much into Vine?
I was familiar with it. It was not something I don't do TikTok either. I'm Twitter and YouTube, like that's it. So
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, just the kind of content the listeners came here for. So on today's episode, what we're doing is we are creating the all opportunity team. And so Jake and I are going to compete against each other and draft players. But here's the catch. These guys are stinky. They are stinky, they are smelly. We don't like them very much. Obviously not actually, but they're players that have a relatively low market value. They're not known as supreme talents, but they project to get a lot of opportunity this year. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try and draft the stinkiest guys we can that we think are going to score a lot of points. As we progress through the draft, the guys will probably get less and less stinky, but obviously still have good opportunity. And then we'll just kind of compare our teams at the end, probably put it up on Twitter, let you guys vote on it. And we can see who's got the stinkiest team that should still score points. Maybe we can even compare at the end of the season to see who got the most points or something. I don't know. It's kind of hard to like come up with the idea for how we're going to do this because it's like we don't want to cheat and just start drafting like Michael Parsons or something. But also I want to have a better team than you, but but I want to stick to the theme of the show.
that's why I wanted the final pick, right? So you could have all these guys, right? And then yeah, on pick 12, I'll be like, yeah, Nick Bolton because Spagnola's defense, like, and then I'll just win based on his production alone.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is going to get off the rails real quick. I'm so excited. So to start this thing off, so yeah, we're each going to get 6 players. We have no idea who we're taking here. We just, we've got a list of potential candidates and I'm just going to go and see what happens. I'm going to have Siri flip a coin. We'll see who goes first. And we'll just get going. Yeah, I know you want the last pick. I'm not gonna let you just get it. Come on, man. You think I trust you? Absolutely. I trust you with
I
my life.
wouldn't.
But still. Okay. Jake, call heads or tails.
Heads.
All right, you have heads. Flip a coin, Siri. She says it's tails. Let's go. I'm undefeated on IDP show podcasts when it comes to coin flips. Absolute skill. So I've got the first pick. And I want someone that is so stinky. Um Man, this is so good. Oh, I forgot to mention actually before we get into this. Um at the end of this episode, we are going to do some listener questions. So we want to make sure that you guys stick around to the end of the show at the idpshow.com. If you guys are a subscriber there, you guys can leave some questions for future episodes. So if you want us to discuss your questions on the show, make sure you go and head over there and get your questions in. We have a couple really, really interesting questions. So we'll cover
Yes.
them at the end of the episode. And that stalling has given me enough time to decide that with my first pick, the stinkiest player award goes to Russ Yeast of the Los Angeles Rams. Now, as it stands right now, it looks like Russ Yeast and Jordan Fuller are the 2 starting safeties there. And I mean, his last name is Yeast. So talk about stinky.
I just inappropriate yeast infection jokes abound at that point. So, no, that's a wonderful choice. That's where I definitely was planning on going. That team is in full blown rebuild. I can't imagine they're going to spend anything on a less than premium position at safety like that right now. And yeah, it's wide open for yeast season. So
This episode is incredible already. I'm so excited to see where this goes with your second pick. Are you gonna stick with the same team or are we going somewhere
I
else? What do you
I
think?
think so. I think so. At this point, we gotta at least have that overlap because we're gonna get some big stink going on here real fast. So looking at the Rams, Christian Roseboom. Now at this point, I'm guessing people are just thinking that we're making up random names or like this is like NCAA auto generated roster type stuff. But no, Christian Roseboom is the LB2 currently on that depth chart behind Ernest Jones. We've seen, they're running back the same defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris. We've seen Ernest Jones be viable as an LB2 in terms of usage and his performance. Now he's obviously a good linebacker where Christian Roseboom, I don't know that I can actively make that same statement. So this is just, again, it's that stink of this guy is going to play a lot of snaps potentially, and he will likely fall into some people carrying the football at some point to score us some IDP points. So yes, linebacker Christian Roseboom, Los Angeles Rams. That's Roseboom, ROZE too, just in case you're actually looking for them on your sleeper apps.
Well, now that you actually like did all the good analysis, I have nothing left but to make fun of his last name again. But yeah, it's Ernest Jones and nobody. So Roseboom, I feel like there's one other guy that he's potentially competing for that number 2 spot, but I don't even remember his name. I'll have to pull up the depth chart and we can talk about this later, but he seems like he's the leader of the number 2 clubhouse there, but we can kind of keep our ears to the ground and watch some camp reports to see if he ends up with that role, but like he is almost certainly on waivers unless you're in leagues with John Macri or Jake Colhagen because like those guys are just a little bit too sharp.
Yeah.
Um
Jake Hummel is the only non-rookie um, that's on that roster currently, as far as I can tell, in the linebacker room.
I still don't believe that you're not making up names. I mean, who are these guys? A name that we might actually recognize is going to be my next pick here. I wish I could just say like whoever starts at safety for the Packers, but I actually have to pick a guy. I don't know if I want to go with Rudy Ford or if I want to go with Jonathan Owens. Like, is Darnell Savin going to lose his job again? I have no idea. I'm just going to say I'm going to say Jonathan Owens. I know we have Rudy Ford here, but I don't even care, man. I'm going Jonathan Owens. He's got some return potential. So there's a lot of upside as far as if he ends up being one of the guys that they let be a punt returner or kick returner. But Jonathan Owens actually was really efficient as a tackler on the Texans last year. Now, that's a pretty volatile statistic. It's probably going to regress, but who else is there in that safety room? I mean, they didn't bring back Adrian Amos. I don't really believe Darnell Savage is something special. Rudy Ford is a backup, and he might be a backup that gets elevated into a starting position. But as it stands, Jonathan Owens could be a starter there, and he could score points. That's all I really care about right now.
Well, the one I like it. It's stinky. I don't know if it has enough stink because Keyshawn Nixon was an all-pro returner last year, so I think that was in the kick return game. So he's got that locked down. But so maybe he does get some of that punt return work. But we'll see. Rudy Ford played some good snaps last year in that defense, and good snaps in terms of numbers, not necessarily performance. So he might have the leg up on him. But we'll see. We'll see how stinky Owens gets for you. All right, who does that bring me to? Oh gosh. All right, this is probably what the only time it makes sense to do this. I'm gonna go with a Bill Belichick defense, and I'm gonna go with New England Patriots linebacker Jelani Tavi. Um, the biggest problem with this, besides the fact that it's a Bill Belichick led defense, is it's a Bill Belichick led defense. Uh, so I just, they run some of the most dime heavy looks New England does out of all teams in the NFL. I think it might actually be the most. So that one linebacker usage, he's not getting ahead of Jawan Bentley at this time without injury. And Tavi is someone that he had modest usage last year, but even in that, with the rotation and the personnel usage that they ran out and will presumably run out most likely again, especially with some of the draft picks that they made, like a Marty Mapu, who hashtag spoiler alert might be talked about later. I just don't see him getting significant usage. But in those deeper leagues where you got to roll out a fourth or fifth linebacker, this is a guy that might be worth taking a look at. Don't
Yeah,
stone me.
I don't like Patriots defenders unless their name's like Matthew Judon or something. So I don't have much to add there. Jelani Tavai, I'm going to disagree with you on how to pronounce his last name because I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's Tavai. That's my analysis. I'm probably being a little less stinky. No, I've got one more potentially stinky guy before I get into some less stinky dudes. Keanu Neal, the starting safety for the Steelers? Question mark. I still have no idea if it's going to be him or somebody else, but Terrell Edmonds is gone. He went to the Eagles. They brought in Keanu Neal. Is he the guy? He's kind of fallen off since his glory days of. Did he ever really have a glory days? Like, do we consider his time with the Falcons a glory days, or was he just a guy that never quite was? I don't really know, but he's a he's a linebacker safety eligible on sleeper. He's been used a lot more in the box, so he should have good usage. But I really have no idea if he's going to be that talented of a player. I don't expect some sort of career revival in Pittsburgh. I mean, they're just bringing in a bunch of old dudes. I mean, Patrick Peterson, like, come on now. They just had Quan Alexander, I think, in for an interview, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what he can do in Pittsburgh. I'm not optimistic. That's why he's stinky. But will he score points for fantasy? That's what we're interested in.
I mean, if you throw back to when he came into the league, his first 2 years, you're talking 120 plus tackles back to back season. I mean, the guy he was legit back then, right? Then he had some injury plagued seasons back to back in 18 and 19. Came back, got a full complement of snaps, and put up 100 tackles. I mean, so if he has even 80% of what he once was at some point, I mean, he could definitely be relevant there. But yeah, I don't know, man. That that aroma's pretty rough on him. That's a pretty good stinky pick.
Thank you. I try to be the stinkiest I can be.
All right. Ah, man, you got me here now. Now
You might have to take someone actually intriguing now.
I know. I'm gonna go this route, and we'll see how the fans react to this one, I guess. So I'm gonna
Mm.
go with defensive end for the Atlanta Falcons, and probably more defensive interior technically, but I think he classifies on the depth chart as a defensive end. Calais Campbell. So was about 6 years ago that this gentleman was Defensive Player of the Year nominee, and I believe he won it for that season as well with the Jaguars when they made their push into the playoffs. Um, he has kind of faded off recently, but he still showed the ability to be relevant in terms of someone who can get decent production on the field. He had 6 sacks over just 600 snaps, so a little low in terms of utilization. But what I like about him is I think that in a deeper league where you got to start maybe a second required defensive tackle, or if you're looking, hey, I need some plug and play on my line mid-season due to injuries, whatever it is. I think this is someone who can actually give us that type of worthy performance, and I really like him because I love Ryan Nielsen coming there from help me out here, New Orleans Saints. He led that defense to be one of the best fronts over that entire time he was a part of it, whether it was defensive line coach, assistant defensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all those different things, right? He always delivered a really strong pass rush there. And I think having that, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, they got Lorenzo Carter, who did D'Angelo Malone, Arnold Ebiketie. They've invested a lot into this front. Caden Ellis, even if you want to throw it out there. So I think it's going to be a bit revamped. The usage will not be ideal, but I think he'll find a way to be effective with that. And so that less than ideal utilization, age, fading of him, I think makes him stinky, but I think he can still be relevant for us this season.
Yeah, man, he has just continued to score points in spite of his age. I think it's really impressive. The Falcons have had a really, really terrible defensive line for
Oh,
so
yes.
long.
Like historically bad.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what they look like this season. I mean, they're not going to be like top of the league. They're not going to be the Eagles or the Commanders or anything, but they should look a lot better. And I'm kind of optimistic that some of the guys on that defensive line can be a little more efficient now that they have invested a little more and are going to need to be respected on the interior. Grady Jarrett, man, maybe he's he could be legit. I remember there was a time when he was talked about as like the number 2 defensive tackle in the league behind Aaron Donald. So we'll see if he can kind of restore to that former glory. I have a trivia question for our listeners here. Obviously, they can't like talk to us as they're listening to the episode, but quiz for you without looking anything up. Behind Divine Diablo, who is the linebacker 2 for the Las Vegas Raiders? It is Steelers legend Robert Spillane. So if you've been in the streets drafting with us, you probably recognize the name because he's always getting drafted. But Robert Spillane, yeah, he joined the Raiders. He's the number 2 linebacker there. Jayon Brown is gone. Denzel Perryman is gone. If you actually believe in, I almost said Blake Masters. Shout out Blake Masters. What's his name? Blake Masterson, the linebacker too.
Luke Masterson.
Mm.
Luke Masterson, playoff fantasy legend last year, man. Racked up like 40 tackles in
absolute legend
time. So
don't ask me who that other guy is. If you don't know, you don't know. But yeah, Robert Spillane, man, he's gonna get good usage. He's been a sound tackler. OGs remember his tackle on Derrick Henry at the goal line that like literally got him injured but saved the Steelers that game. Absolutely legendary. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google Robert Spillane Derrick Henry goal line tackle and just watch that on replay. Let that pump you up as you like go to the gym to lift some weights. Man, that was inspiring. But this is top tier analysis right here. This is simply a volume play. This is an opportunity play. That is literally what this podcast is for. And he's going to get some opportunities to score you points.
All right. So I'm gonna go back to a team that we've talked to already, and especially a position you love. You always love talking defensive backs. I'm pretty sure that was why you went with 2 of them right away, because you just despise defensive backs, and any chance you can disparage them, you take. But I don't think that's appropriate, especially when we start talking about nickelbacks or slot corners. And Keyshawn Nixon of the Green Bay Packers. I know maybe it's hard to say, hey, he was an All-Pro last year, so how's it fair to say he's stinky? Well, he didn't really exactly lock down the slot role last year, at least not till the end of the season with some injuries. He really stepped into that role. They did not resign the former incumbent to the position, leaving it wide open for Nixon. And the key thing here is to really call out, if you're not playing with return yardage as part of your scoring, I highly recommend it, because I am of the mindset of anything that happens on an NFL football field, we should be trying to add into the game of fantasy football one way or another. And so with that, having that return yardage is obviously a huge boost for him. Not even necessarily from the big play upside of it, which does exist, but just the fact that if, hey, the Packers are, giving up 2-3 scores a game, and you're talking about this guy getting a shot to get, 75 to 100 yards added into a scoring from returns perspective, with the starting slot corner role to boot, which is one of the more valuable defensive back positions, I think Nixon's someone that I'm willing to vote for, at least, Keyshawn Nixon, that is.
I have a pop quiz for you.
That was a reference to a former president, Nixon, if you didn't get that reference.
We are popping off with the political jokes today. You don't even know that the previous one was a political joke, which was what makes it so great. All right, pop quiz for you. I want you to guess, according to Best Ball ADP.
Yep.
Of all DBs, where is Keyshawn Nixon going?
He is DB 43.
Okay, you're close.
All right.
He's going later than that. So I'll give you one more guess.
DB 54.
Okay, actually pretty close. DB 60.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like that qualifies him as stinky enough that he can make this list.
See? I know what I'm talking about.
Heck yeah. Hey, wait a minute. Why do you get to be green on the sheet and I have to be red on the sheet? You're like making me the bad guy. Is that how this works?
Yeah, and it's Christmas though too, right? Then we're like Christmas in May. That's a thing, I think.
I think they do that in Australia, right? That's how that works. I'm so sorry to our Australian listeners. I know that's not how they do it. I'm pretty sure they just like it's Christmas, but it's in the summer and they all wear like swimsuits and stuff because the Southern Hemisphere, their seasons are swapped around. Anyways,
you're probably right. I just remember The Simpsons. The toilets like went the other way, so that's what I remember about Australia.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
pick.
Okay. I'm getting significantly less stinky with these last three because I understand not all of you guys are as much of a degenerate as we are, and so your leagues might not be as deep as ours. So I'm gonna pick the stinkiest of the not so stinky guys. I'm gonna draft linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, Anthony Walker, because I just talked about him like literally this week on the IDP After Show, but he is kind of sort of the incumbent there. He was the green dot last year. He kind of was the reason that JOK wasn't on the field as much as rookie year. And Anthony Walker started off as the snap leader for the team before he got injured at the start of the season. Now, that position was an absolute mess for the team last year. It was so difficult to predict, but they have a new defensive coordinator. They chose to bring back Anthony Walker. And I have to imagine that that means they'll believe he's going to be on the field. Will he remain the green dot? I don't know. It seems likely, at least that there's a good chance he is. And because he's on the field, that means he's going to score points. So that is why I am drafting him to my team of stinkies.
Is that your official team name? The team of Stinkies? I don't.
We're working on the trademark and the logo. Hit us up in the comments. But yes, I think we're going to roll forward with this.
You seem so emphatic about that, so I had to know. Oh gosh, all right. You got me really in a weird spot here where I'm like, I know who I want to say, but then I'm like, do I just want to get really gross right now with some of the names on this list? No, you know what? I'm gonna go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm gonna go with edge rusher Charles Omenihu. So he was a free agent acquisition this year. They signed him to a 2-year, $20 million deal. Most of it guaranteed right up front here in the first year. So I don't know that he's necessarily a lock for 2 years of value, but really we're just looking at this year, right? And who can get us some points right now, fill out those rosters, or just be that depth piece that we need overall. But Frank Clark gone. There's a lot of talent on this line, especially Chris Jones had an amazing year last year, and I don't know that he's trending downward anytime soon. George Karlaftis showed that he can be a real force on that line too. One of the better pressure numbers for a rookie we've seen in the past few years. All that said, that's going to leave Omenihu, someone who's had the chance to be coached up by some of the better coaching in defensive coaching in San Francisco prior to this, and comes to a very tenured defense under Steve Spagnuolo. I think it's a good setup for him, and I see him just being that other edge rusher on the outside opposite Karlaftis and getting plenty of snaps, 750, 800 snaps, and the opportunities will be there to make something out of it. So Charles Omenihu, not quite as stinky, but good enough for me.
Yeah, I think we're trending in the right direction here too. His ADP might actually start to fall a little bit since they added Felix and Udike Uzoma in the draft. But I think FAU is probably going to be more of a long-term play,
Yes.
whereas I really think Omenihu can be an immediate producer for this team, and I really like that call. Actually, I think it's a perfect combination of stinky, but really really good opportunity. It's funny because there's like 3 guys that I'm choosing between, but I'm realizing that like all 3 of them I just talked about on the After Show podcast, and so I want to diversify, but
And
also
this is it. This
they
is
fit
one
the
of
theme so well.
This is pick a 6 for you. This is the last one.
Wait, really? Already? I
Yeah.
thought this was 5. 1, 2. Okay, I have Robert Spillane, Jonathan Owens, Russ Yeast, Anthony Walker, Keanu Neal. Wow. We might have to go a couple more rounds. What do you say? Can we go like 7 or 8 rounds?
We can do that.
Okay, great. Because there's a lot more guys I want to get to. I want to get to some actually guys that might smell pretty nice. So in order to get there, we needed a couple more picks. So I think I am going to go with a guy that I talked about earlier this week with my guy, Elandon Roberts, linebacker for the Steelers. I guess it's time, right? We're finally getting into the guys that are actually kind of decent. The reason that Elandon Roberts is sort of stinky is because his ADP is just so low. His market value is so low. And historically, he hasn't been that exciting of an asset. I don't think if you approached somebody and said, hey, man, I want to trade for Elandon Roberts, I don't think anybody's going to be like, nah, man, he's off limits. I can't move him. He's just an absolute locked in on my roster. He's no Justin Jefferson, you know. So while I didn't, I wouldn't recommend like trading for any linebackers necessarily, especially Landon Roberts if you have to pay up for him. But if he's on your waivers, or if you can just kind of sneak him into a trade as a throw-in piece, he's going to produce this year. He's the number 2 in the linebacker room behind Cole Holcomb right now. And while they don't necessarily use their number 2 a huge amount, he's going to see the field a lot. They don't really have anybody else there to compete outside of Holcomb. And so I'm really confident that he's going to be on the field for a very, very significant portion of snaps.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you talked about Neal, right? He could see some maybe cutting into the boxer if they use him that way, because it's how he's been used in the past. But I don't know that that's necessarily fully his game anymore. So no, it's the right amount of stink. I like it.
I just realized I talked about 3 current or former Steelers so far on this podcast. So just stick around to the end of the episode. I'll tell you guys to draft, Minkah Fitzpatrick or TJ Watt or something.
Oh, I love it. All right, well, moving on. I am going to take a look at one Nicholas Morrow, Philadelphia Eagles linebacker. To me, I think the biggest reason that there's quote unquote stink to this is some people don't even fully realize he's there because the Nakobe Dean hype is just through the roof. That said, you look at what Nicholas Morrow did last year, went to, the Bears, took over as the play caller, the green dot wearer while Roquan was there. He did it. Morrow did it from week 1 to week 17, right? Wire to wire. And, Jack Sanborn was amazing, but Morrow was the guy calling the plays. That's who the coaches trusted to get everyone set. Now, Dean was here last year. There is a little bit of a shakeup with Gannon leaving. I believe that the Eagles did hire from within, though, for their defensive coordinator spot, or maybe not. I'll have to verify that. Regardless, there's going to be some slight changes. So it's not a guarantee that Dean just walks in and takes over right away. Obviously, the path is clearly there, but I don't think that we can just count out Nicholas Morrow. And worst case, if he isn't the guy, and he's just number 2. Kaiser White last season was a 75% snap guy in that defense, and that's still very, very viable in terms of some of these linebackers that we're talking about. These are guys that okay, maybe they can get us to 800 snaps, 850 snaps, and we have to be okay with that if we're looking at adding these kind of guys to our roster for whatever reason it is, depth pieces, you're starting that many guys or injuries, whatever have you. But it's he's got, again, just enough stink that you're like, really? You want this guy? But I think the path where he could be relevant and maybe even more than just relevant exists. So yeah, I'm gonna take my shots on Nick Morrow.
Yeah, dude, Nick Morrow is the kind of player that wins you fantasy leagues because he's so inexpensive. His return on investment is almost certainly going to be so high. Like, obviously, yeah, there's linebackers that are spendy. You could get a Roquan Smith. He's going to be great for your team. But the opportunity cost in acquiring Roquan Smith is significantly greater than the opportunity cost in acquiring a guy like Nick Morrow. Now, obviously, he's not going to produce as much as Roquan Smith, but he's going to produce a lot of points. Go get this guy. Like, come on. And
so
I love.
Yeah, I gotta cut you off. Sorry. So it's Sean Desai is who they brought in as defensive coordinator, who came over from Seattle. So it is potentially, a coaching change that's significant. Language changes in the defense, possibly schemes, those things, which to me lends itself to a veteran being able to be more stable in that situation. So just another reason for Nick Morrow.
I hear you. There's like 3 guys left that I really, really want to take, and I have 2 more picks. So I'm gonna have to make some tough choices. Man, I already talked about this guy earlier this week. All right, how about this? If you want to hear about some stinky guys that I really like, and I'm not talking about on today's episode, go listen to the IDP After Show from earlier this week, where we did some keep trade cuts for some relatively stinky players. So I'm going to skip them, and I'm going to move on to some guys that are actually really intriguing. I'll save my final pick for like the actually really, really, really nice smelling individual. But for now, since we're talking about current and former Eagles linebackers, let's taltalk about Kaiser White. Since you just discussed him, he's the current linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you might be asking me, well, sir, Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, who, by the way, for those of you listening, Jake and I are both sporting very exciting signed Zaven Collins jerseys behind us on the wall because we are hashtag Zaven season stands. And yeah, but he's getting work in on the edge. Isaiah Simmons is like weird because he's weird. And so the real question is elite analysis. He's kind of an overhang guy, Simmons is. We don't really know where he's going to play, but there is almost certainly an opening in the middle linebacker spot for a linebacker to play a lot of work or to play a lot of snaps. And new Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon is the former Eagles defensive coordinator. He brought Kaiser White over with him from that defense, and I have to expect Kaiser White has a really good chance to play the green dot. I know we were talking about this before the episode. Is it going to be Zaven Collins? Is it going to be Kaiser White? I'm not going to guarantee that it's Kaiser White, but I have a really strong feeling it will be him simply because he's more familiar with this defense. And if that's the case, man, he's going to see so many snaps and he's going so late in these best ball drafts. His dynasty value is probably super low. So I see him as a really, really nice opportunity play. And he's really not that stinky either.
No, he's really not. And I love him. And I was actually not as keen on him maybe being the play caller, but again, we talked about that and the realization that they brought over Jonathan Gannon as well as, now I forget who their defensive coordinator is. But it's going to bug me, Nick Rallis. So coming from that same scheme or that same coaching tree with Gannon, there's a strong chance that just having that knowledge is going to carry over. And yeah, they just want to utilize Collins and Simmons in different ways. So now is the time to do that, right? The stink is there now because of the uncertainty, but once the OTAs and training camps and all that stuff starts hitting, and we get more and more news to work with, that's not, the stink's going to start to fade away, right? A little bit of deodorant, maybe some Axe body spray. I don't know. Is that still a thing? That was a thing when I was in college. So,
Can I tell a story really quick?
You
I
absolutely
need to get this off
can,
my
Evan.
chest. Okay. I know he's not listening to this, so he's not going to care. But my roommate in college, man, instead of taking out the trash, it would start to smell really bad, obviously, because he ate disgusting food and then he put it in the trash can and it would just sit there and smell up our entire dorm room. And it would smell so bad. We'd be like, hey, man, like you should probably empty your trash can. He's like, I don't have time. So guess what this man did? He grabbed a can of Axe body spray and he said, Axe bomb. And he would spray the trash can with his Axe body spray so that it would stop smelling bad. I'm trying to find like a fantasy football tie-in for this. Jonathan Gannon is going to come in and Axe bomb the Cardinals defense and make them better, but like
pew 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 pew
finger guns. This is such quality content. I'm so excited.
Okay, this is it. I got so Axe bombs when I was in college was you would buy the Axe can, you would get tape and you would like start taping it over the top, and then you'd like pull it all the way down and rip the tape so that it would just keep spraying, and then you would like throw it into someone's dorm room and pull the thing shut, so then the Axe body spray would just spin around in a circle and then just overly erase that entire existence of that room with Axe spray. So, which is maybe what some of these players need is an Axe bomb to
That's
get
amazing.
them back into our good graces. So with that, I'm up, right? This is my turn. You nailed it with Kaiser White.
Yeah. You have this pick and then your next pick. Just keep in
All
mind, my last pick's going to be like a kind of sort of solid player. So pace yourself.
I'm jumping the gun already, and this is what's great about having the last pick, right? Like I can game the system, which is like Evan's favorite thing to do, so I'm doing it to him. So Leonard Williams, he was a former top overall draft pick for the New York Jets. Was he like number 3 overall or something in 2016 or something like that?
Do you think I remember these things, man? I didn't even care about football in 2016.
You probably weren't even born yet. But no, so I mean, and he came in for the Jets. He had like a 13 sack season just a few years ago, but now he's on this defensive front that has, a higher draft pick than Azeez Ojulari a couple years back, a high second rounder who flashed at times. It's got Dexter Lawrence, who's come in and just dominated the interior of that defense and made a huge name for himself among the interior defenders in the NFL. Kayvon Thibodeau was a high draft pick. Just not this last draft season, but the previous, had the huge sack fumble against the Commanders, kind of that coming out party. So people forget that Leonard Williams is even a guy on this line at times potentially, right? And I had to cheat and look, but he's going as DL 55 right now in best balls. So you're talking about this guy as a low end defensive line 4, and it's a guy who's consistently played 800 snaps, consistently getting 40 to 50 pressures. He's had highs of 60 plus pressures in a season. The guy's still really good, and he's playing with a bunch of other guys who are really good. He's likely to still give us production. So the stink maybe isn't there. Maybe it was from when he struggled with the Jets and came over, but he's really reestablished himself as the Giants, and I think he's just that forgotten piece in a front 4 that's really talented. And so with that, you can use some of that forgetfulness / stinkiness of him to, I think, find some really good value with Leonard Williams.
I love Leonard Williams as a value. He's so productive. I don't remember, was he the one that was kind of injured last year? I hate to drop this on you without you actually remembering. I remember
Azeez
looking.
Ojulari got hurt quite a bit last year. I don't
Yeah, man.
remember.
Which, strangely enough, by the way, Azeez Ojulari, I have a strangely high exposure to him in these best ball drafts. Like, I have an addiction to like drafting him in the 6th round, like every single time. I don't really know why that is. I guess I just really like his upside. But Leonard Williams, yeah. He missed a couple games last year, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6.5 games, 7.5 games. But every single time that he played, like he put up, for the most part, really, really big points. So yeah, I like it. He's exciting. He's not that stinky. So you got a
Yeah,
head start on me on the non-stinkiness. But my
gotta
last
win.
guy, I think he just got axe bombed, but in a good way, because Zadarius Smith is no longer a part of the team, leaving Marcus Davenport to be the new starting defensive end for the Minnesota Vikings. So, disclaimer, the Vikings hired Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. So I can't exactly copy paste Zadarius Smith's usage last year over to this year, but I'm going to do it anyways, because what the heck, dude? Like, I'm so excited for him. I've been reaching for him on all these best ball drafts. I am totally bought in on Marcus Davenport as a huge value as it stands. I still think you can buy high on him. Whoever the Marcus Davenport manager is, they're probably like, oh yeah, this guy's going to get some trade offers now. I don't even care. Like, go pay up for him, because he just got a new contract with the team. I think he's really talented. I think he's kind of underrated right now. And I think he's going to get a ton of really, really valuable opportunity on this defensive line. He's going to get sacks, dude. He's going to get tackles. He's going to get so many snaps. I really think he's a kind of a player that can round out like a DL2, DL3 spot on your team and be like incredibly productive at a price tag that's honestly pretty respectable.
I like it. I was a big Davenport fan. I think end of year 2, he really had a nice push for the second half of that season. It was his sophomore year. And then things just never really sustained or leveled off. In fact, it kind of went back the other way. But no, I'm with you. He's got some stink from that. He was a high draft pick. He never lived up to it in New Orleans, like I said. And I think this is a good spot for him to try and reset that. So 1-year prove it deal with some talent, a little bit of talent on the line with him. Yeah, let's ride.
Let's ride.
A little bit of rust there for you.
Oh, yeah.
I think then I'm going to take this one, and because I felt bad about kind of cheating the system a little bit there with my last pick. But there's an injury that usually the stink of an injury is bad, for a given player. But in this case, I think people are less concerned about an injury than they should be, and it should give more credence to this player, and that is Devin Bush of the Seattle Seahawks, linebacker. And the injury I'm referencing is Jordan Brooks, the other linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. Bobby Wagner coming back home, clearly LB1 in that room. Now, everyone thinks back to when those two were together. Jordan Brooks was still extremely relevant as a linebacker. Those two played a ton of snaps together, zone heavy scheme. They both were very, very IDP relevant. While Jordan Brooks was someone who, in his last couple seasons, has struggled a little bit in terms of his NFL production, specifically his PFF grades. And not only that, but the actual injury itself. So I consider myself a little bit of an injury nerd. Not that I actually understand the actual, wording and what they all mean, but I look for the outcomes of those studies and what they mean in terms of, layman's terms for us to understand. And essentially, linebackers are the third most injured position when it comes to ACL injuries, and they experience roughly about a 12-month time frame for that, plus or minus 2 months, I believe, was the variance they saw. But because it's such a highly injured position for that type of injury, there's plenty of data, and it was done over a very significant time frame of 5 years. Now, it was 2013 to 2018. So yes, medical technology advances, but that also gives us enough of a time frame after the return of the injury to say, okay, do these guys really return their value right away coming off these injuries? And they don't. They don't. The value of them drops significantly year one from that injury, plus the time frame to come back. I just don't see Jordan Brooks jumping in and being relevant. Now, someone like Devin Bush, who has the stink of this guy was a first round pick, he flashed year one, he suffered an ACL injury, and he was not the same right away. And his production didn't deliver in year 3 and 4 after this injury. Now he's had a chance to recover more. He's got a new landing spot. He's playing alongside a veteran who can help build him up. I believe Devin Bush is someone who is an extreme value, and that stink that you smell in him might just be Jordan Brooks next to him rubbing off a little bit, because I'm not buying any of that Jordan Brooks. If I'm taking anything, I'm taking Devin Bush in this locker room for the linebacker for the Seahawks.
Oh yeah, we gotta love more former Steelers linebackers. Let's go, baby. I'll also add, dude, Jordan Brooks, like he didn't get surgery for his ACL until January or something. Those reports saying him being ready for the start of training camp or like for the start of the preseason, heck no, there is no way. I just don't believe that's happening unless they have Leasis, Dr. Leasis over there with his new ACL recovery technology that he's working on. Unless he's the guy that they have in charge of this, I just don't believe Devin Bush, or sorry, not Devin Bush, Jordan Brooks. I just don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. Like, no hate to him. That would be great
No,
if he was. Good for, Javonte Williams too. I want my boy Javonte back and healthy, but
right.
just as it stands, the data says it takes this long to recover, and you really you can't accelerate that process too much. Otherwise, you're just going to make yourself more injury prone down the road too. So there's still plenty of guys on this list that we didn't get a chance to talk about. Oh, well, just ask us questions. If you guys want to know some more stinky values that you guys can get late in drafts, man, there's some really good guys on here. We'll have to do a little Q&A session sometime to really break down some more of these guys. But speaking of a Q&A session,
Segues.
yes, sir, dude, look at us go. We are elite at transitions. We're going to get into our Q&A session. So a thread was posted to the idpshow.com prompting for questions for this episode. We got a lot of great questions, and we're going to talk about them. If you want your questions to get answered on the next episode, you know where to find it, theidpshow.com. So the first question of the episode comes from the man, the myth, the legend, Eric Harms. He wants us to keep trade cut 2 different sets of 3 players. Now, thankfully, we've actually talked about a couple of these guys recently, but our first group of 3 is Denzel Perryman, Kyzir White, and Azeez Al-Shaair. And I'm glad you and I actually agree on this keep, trade, cut. So I'm going to let you take this one and kind of explain the reasoning for why we would keep, trade, or cut them.
All right, so keep is Al-Shaair, hands down. He's in a position. He's, in my opinion, the clear lead linebacker in that room. They love dime personnel in Tennessee too. Not as much as New England, but he should by far and away lead that room. Your trade is Kyzir White. He's got some name cachet. He was relevant last year. He's in a system where he's relevant again. Maybe there's not as much, so you might have to wait to see some of the production before you can trade him. But and then Perriman is a cut. That's you want to talk about a dirty, ambiguous linebacker room. I mean, sure, if you want to call your shot because you think you can get supreme value out of it, totally understand that there. But for me, in this group, he's clearly the cut because there's no clear path for him.
That actually, Christian Kirksey's still on the team. Like, I kind of expected him to be gone by now. if you had to today choose between Christian Kirksey and Denzel Perryman to be the other starting linebacker next to Christian Harris, who would you call your shot on?
Perryman.
Okay, so there's at least some hope for him.
Oh, for sure, but it's
Yeah.
still too dirty for me to be excited about any of that. So
Yeah. The fact that we're asking this question, him versus Christian Kirksey, already says why he's the cut versus Kaiser White and Aziz Al-Shaair. Okay. Our next one has some guys that are a little bit more interesting with Cole Holcomb of the Steelers, David Long of the Dolphins, and Drew Tranquil of the Chiefs. I'm going to handle this one because I know we agree on this. Drew Tranquil is definitely the cut. And the
yes.
reason for that is because Nick Bolton and Willie Gay and our boy Leo Chenal, Mr. Pull-ups on the side of a van or whatever. What was
Tour
that?
bus.
Like tour bus? Dude, that was sick. Go Google that video, you guys. Come on now. Get on it. It's sick. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you are missing out. But Drew Tranquil's the cut. It's a really crowded room. Steve Spagnuolo does not give a lot of volume to linebackers, with the exception of perhaps Nick Bolton. So Tranquil is the guy that we'd be cutting here. David Long and Cole Holcomb are both intriguing because they both have a good chance to be 100% snap players. But I have a lot more faith in Cole Holcomb absolutely locking up that role versus David Long, who there's a lot of guys there. Like, and I'm not just talking about the linebacker room. I'm talking on the defensive line, in the secondary. I don't really know how they're going to use all of these players. They have the ability to be really flexible on this defense with their new defensive coordinator. Jayon Brown, not Jayon Brown. Who's the other linebacker there? I'm so close. It's I'll have to look it up later.
Which room?
In Miami.
Linebacker? Channing Tindall?
Yeah, above him. Man, I should have looked this up ahead of time.
I got it. You finish up. I got you.
All right, sick. This is elite content right here. See, now I really want to look it up. Jerome Baker.
Yep.
See, I knew it was a JB. We had a Justin Bieber somewhere on here. I just couldn't remember what it was. Jonas Brothers. I can keep going. We can do this all day. Oh man. Hey, they just came out with a new album, by the way. So if you want some summer vibes, go check that out. This is an amazing episode. Cole Holcomb's our keep. Yes, I think we can agree on that.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Do you want to take
Which
over
means
the next?
we trade David Long if we didn't clarify that then.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, we would trade David Long. I do like David Long though. Don't get me wrong, but not as much as Cole Holcomb. Him and his mullet.
All right. Yeah. Next we had Shaq. So he was asking, who are your favorite IDP rookie dart throws for a 7-round rookie draft? Super flex, tight end premium, IDP. Like, it's easy to toss out names, but who are a couple we're looking to leave our drafts with if you have late picks in a draft like this? Starting 11, defensive tackle and cornerback required, balanced scoring, all positions matter and are worth consideration. So, who are the guys you're trying to target in round 6 and round 7?
So I'm going to start with the higher ADP guys because those are the guys that I'm more likely to absolutely try to leave the drafts with. And I got to start off with my guy, Sidney Brown. He landed with the Eagles. He's probably going to be a strong safety. He's built like the kind of a guy that you want to be one of your starting safeties. He's probably more of like a 4th, 5th rounder ish, depending on how sharp your league is. I've gotten him in the 6th round before. So, never say never. There's another JB reference for you, but if you can get him later, that would be great. There's some other DBs that I also like. Jair Brown, Jartavius Martin. Jair Brown landed with the 49ers. He's also built like a freaking truck, tackling machine. Will he start? I don't know. There's a chance that he could, but it's probably going to take a little bit for him to get into that starting role. But a guy that will start is Jartavius Martin as the probably nickel corner for the Washington Commanders, kind of taking over that Bobby McCain role. He's a guy I've drafted every single draft. I've even picked him up in these best ball drafts, even the shallower best ball drafts, because I'm so confident in him just starting off with a full-time starting role. Am I a little too optimistic? Maybe. But if you want to draft a guy later in these rookie drafts that's going to have production out the gate, man, get these guys. DBs always go late here, and that's a really great place to get some value. But Jake, who are some guys that you really like late?
So I'm going to get a little bit dirtier.
Ooh.
Ivan Pace Jr. was an undrafted free agent. He's one that maybe I'm not using my 7th round on. Maybe I am, kind of dependent on how my roster construction is made up a little bit. But if not that, I'm definitely taking shots on him. On the waiver wire after the fact. That's a guy that on film I just loved pre-draft process. Really disappointed. He didn't land higher draft capital to kind of secure him for a week 1 spot. Mike Morris, defensive end for Seattle. A lot of talent in terms of like Uchenna Nwosu already there. They drafted Derek Hall high, so Mike Morris kind of gets slotted in behind that. And there's several. Darrell Taylor has had some success there, so he kind of gets forgotten about maybe there. He was, I think, a 5th round pick in the NFL draft, but it's a guy who had like a 17% pass rush pressure rate his last year in Michigan, and the guy can flat out play at times. So he's another one to kind of keep an eye on. I had one other one on my list here. Oh, Andre Carter, another undrafted free agent. Landed with Minnesota. And again, we talked about Marcus Davenport kind of being the guy this year. Carter's just another one, right? Where you got that 7th round pick where maybe you don't use it on him, maybe you do, or you're at least looking for him on your waivers after the fact, because these are these UDFAs that I think have proven enough in college that they can find a way to make themselves valuable to a roster one way or another. And at that point, then it's all about opportunity, like we're talking about in this podcast. So those are a couple of them that I'm kind of looking at. Oh, and JL Skinner to the Broncos, safety from Boise State. I think he went in the 6th round. He was just a guy that he had a torn pec, so he missed a lot of the offseason workout stuff. Wasn't able to really put himself out there, but I love the size and athleticism he has in today's NFL to try to play that, that big nickel type of position, 3rd safety, and he could, I think, easily slot into that type of role for the Broncos defense early on. Yeah, I shouldn't say early on. Maybe by halfway through this season, he might get a shot at that, depending on how the pec's recovering. But yeah, he's a guy. Those are some of the guys that I'm really looking for in that late 6th, 7th round dart throw.
Yeah, man. And going even deeper, I mean, if I can leave my drafts with Will Anderson, I'm gonna I'm gonna try and get that. Some other defensive linemen, not Will Anderson. He's probably going in the 1st round of your rookie drafts. But more like 2nd year options, KJ Henry, edge rusher for the Commanders, or Servassier Dennis, the linebacker for the Buccaneers.
Yep.
Those are players that have a chance to be elevated into a starting role in year 2, because I don't think that the Commanders can keep Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I don't think that the Buccaneers are going to keep Devin White and Levante David. So both of those guys are guys that could be elevated in year 2. But a year 1 guy, Owen Papoe for the Arizona Cardinals, I don't know if he's gonna have that linebacker 2 spot, like we talked about earlier. Zaven Collins might be an edge. He might be an inside linebacker. We don't really know what they're gonna do with Isaiah Simmons. But if there's a chance, a small one, but there is a chance that Zaven Collins is a pure edge, Isaiah Simmons is a pure nickel, which leaves Owen Papoe to be the other linebacker next to Kaiser White, which could be interesting. I don't really think it's going to happen, but there's at least a chance.
Yep, you're there. I know you're there. I'm there with you. One I want to throw out. I read the question and didn't fully process. Right, so you said DT required as well. So some of those other DTs, it was actually a really deep defensive tackle class too. I feel like this year. You look at like Zach Pickens, Gervin Dexter, and Keanu Benton. We talked a lot about the Steelers, so why not bring them up again? Dexter and Pickens both have chances to carve out playing times on that defensive line for the Bears. That was pretty devoid of talent overall, so they could easily find a way to relevance right away. I'd probably lean Pickens for IDP value potentially out of those ones, but Keanu Benton, I've heard some people that I really, really appreciate their analysis and scouting talk about actually reminded them a lot of Cam Hayward, right? So, that whole Steelers connection continues, but and as a Wisconsin fan myself, he was someone that I really appreciated watching, and I think again, same thing. If you got that DT required, this is a great guy to stash maybe for a year, and I think could be very relevant to IDP defensive tackle required position player.
Cam Hayward is immortal. He will never retire. But talking of other defensive tackles, our next question here comes from Kai. He says, "Hi guys, I'm in a Dynasty Superflex 12-team league, looking to improve defensive tackle this year. I have Derek Brown, Grover Stewart, and Sebastian Joseph Day on the roster. Solid, but not spectacular. My question is this: Milton Williams is on my waivers. Am I better taking Milton off waivers or investing a draft pick in Jalen Carter? And if I take one, who should I drop out of Grover or Sebastian Joseph Day? Thanks, from Kai. So I'm going to start this one off. We talked about this a little bit before the episode. Milton Williams, not the answer. So the follow up question is, how should you approach improving the defensive tackle position? Jalen Carter obviously is a great option if he's not too expensive, but there is a chance that he's going to be too expensive. So the follow up there is, who's a little cheaper but could still be a good option to improve your defensive line? And you need to look no further than the next couple guys that were taken at defensive tackle. Now, we're not going to talk about the guys that, or the guy that the Cowboys drafted, but Kalijah Cansey got drafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I know we love Kalijah Cansey. And there's also Brian Brzee, who got drafted to the New Orleans Saints, and they are pretty much devoid of anybody on the interior of the defensive line since the Falcons literally signed every single one of them in free agency. So Brian Brzee could start literally year one.
And I expect him to. So yeah, I think that, this is, I think, exactly the thought process we got into, right? Like, if in a vacuum you take Jalen Carter and you cut Sebastian Joseph Day, like if you're just talking what is the best defensive tackle value, that's hands down what you do. It really comes down to what is the opportunity cost to make that decision, though. And so for me, I'm a big Kalijah Cansey believer. I think you can let Carter go. You can find other value for your roster at that spot that's, overall better for your team makeup, and you can get 75 to 80% of the production, if not more, from a Cansey and a Brzee much later in the draft at that point. So, I mean, that's, again, overall game theory, as Evan likes to discuss, that's the route I would go. But hopefully that's enough to help you make the best decision for your roster, though, Kai, overall here.
Awesome. Do you want to take this last question?
Yeah, and it's one way I think we kind of already answered, but we don't want to keep you out in the dark there, Benjamin, because we appreciate you submitting the question. So, is Nick Morrow really the truth at linebacker in Philly, or is he expected to have a smaller workload, or worse, is someone looming to take his job? So, in my opinion, right, I talked about Nick Morrow, someone who I took in this draft, and yes, we labeled them stinky, but we took them in this draft because they have some relative value to us this season still. And I think that value is, again, I think you're looking at a minimum floor of him as someone who is going to be 75% of that snap count, which is a very viable LB in that deeper range, in that LB 3-4 range, probably maybe closer to the 4. With that said, he has the real possibility of being still even the lead guy potentially, just based on defensive switching veteran. He's been a play caller before. He's done it, successfully in that regard, in terms of keeping the defensive players in position, set up, and the things that do matter to an NFL coach. Because, and I think Sigmund Bloom's talked about it, right? The fallacy of rational coaching, like, but Nakobe Dean's this super athletic, fun young guy. He needs to be the one that we run out on the field as much as we can. Well, if Morrow's going to actually have all your defenders set right every time, that could very easily be the guy who's getting 100% of the snaps. So, not saying that is the case, but I do think it's a fair chance to say that's in his range of outcomes.
You're really not worried about Davion Taylor's finally having his breakout season?
one of the RAS masters right there.
Oh yeah, man. Maybe it's not happening. Yeah, I agree with you. Nicholas Morrow, he is going to be a really good value. Hey, props to Benjamin Ziegler for getting his question in literally down to the wire, last minute. I might have to refresh the page to see if I didn't miss anybody. Nope. All right, we're good. We got all the questions. Jake, we made it. We survived to the end of the episode. All of the tomfoolery, all of the boy bands, all of the stink and Axe body spray. And here we are. We're still alive 1 hour later. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling gross, but you know what? That's what a good shower will do for me in the morning is clean this stink off and get us moving on to the next stage of the off season here. Get us into some real OTAs and training camp news that we can start to really understand who is going to be doing what for these teams. But before we get there, take your shots on these guys. Right now's the time to do it. Be ahead of your league mates. Figure it out. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And we would not be doing any of this fun stuff. We probably would. I should have found a better transition, I guess I should say, for that, because like we're degenerates, man. We would do this already. But having a project to invest into, to kind of have be available to the public to show just how much of a degenerate we are, really makes it a lot more fun, which is why the IDP Show Draft Kit is such an incredible and beautiful work of art. And I am actually going to call it that because it is so nice. Again, I say this every single time I talk about it, but like best in the industry, I have no doubts about it. I've seen the work that these guys have put in. I've seen the content that's available. TheIDPshow.com. If you don't have it yet, give it a shot. You don't have to
$5 a
have it
month.
forever. Yeah, it's a $5 draft kit. And then if you don't like it after the first month, I'm going to miss you. I will cry a little bit, but I will understand. But I just don't think it's going to come to that because you're going to see it and you're going to be like, actually, great. This is the only subscription I need for anything IDP because it's going to be great. And once we get to the season, we're going to have weekly rankings. We're going to have like projections and stuff. I think, like, dude, that's awesome. I don't need anything else. That's it. We have the ADP for the best ball drafts. We're going to have rookie draft ADP. So you know not only where these guys should be taken, but where they're actually being taken. Write ups for every single team. Like, need I say more? No, but I will. Like, I can keep going. Addy's ranks, like, holy crap, dude. Addy's ranks are insane. Is he okay? Actually, though, Adam, message me. Are you okay? You are spending way too much time making these things like the best in the business. Yeah, it's very clearly late for us. I think we should probably call this one before it gets even more off the rails. But man, this draft kit is awesome. Also, please hop in more best ball drafts. I'm getting lonely. I keep doing more and more and more of them, and I need some more people to beat. So if you want me to beat you in best ball, you know where to find me in
Hey,
my 30th best ball draft.
I got to plug the best balls, right? So I'm definitely not in as many as Evan, but I do partake in probably far too many of them myself. From people that I've kind of finagled or strong armed into some of the free ones that they offer at times, which is basically all you got to do is sign up for the free newsletter for IDP Show, right? And they'll sponsor guys into these best ball drafts. I've had so many people tell me like, this is great, man. Like I got exposure to so many names I didn't even really think of or realize. And it keeps your mind on top of these things and relevant to what's happening in the IDP space. So, because obviously if you're listening to us, you play IDP in some fashion. And this is just a great way to keep your mind sharp. So maybe you're not doing 30 of them like Evan, but maybe you're doing, one every month or one every other month or something like that, just to keep you fresh on that stuff. And I highly recommend it. And that's firsthand feedback from non-IDP degenerates like ourselves. So
Yes. I will also say when you do hop in these drafts, like we have best ball rankings, we have best ball ADP. Set your cues. It's a slow timer. You have no excuses to have your draft look as terrible as Best Ball 25 did, where 22 retired players were drafted. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm done. I got it out of my system. We can call it an episode now. If you guys want to interact with us on Twitter, if you have more questions for us, you want to know some more of those sneaky names on the list that's like literally right in front of my face, and I could tell you, but I'm not going to because I have self-control and we're not going to be here for another 2 hours. Shoot us a message on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at IDPEvan. You can find Jake and his beautiful face on Twitter at Jake Colhagen. That's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, peace out.